And we're back. Smoke and Mirrors, heard every Monday through Friday night, 6 to 7 Pacific Time, 9 to 10 on the East Coast. I'm Jay Weidner. We're talking to James Howard Kunstler, the great writer, researcher, and journalist who has brought us a lot of prescient facts over the last few years, and I'd like to hear what he says about what's about to happen. What do you think? I'm sure you get this a lot. What do you think people should do? I mean, at this point, with the number of kind of pressures and catastrophes just over the horizon, I mean, what can somebody do?
Well, there's an awful lot for them to think about. In my opinion, is it's very important to get out of debt. It's very important to consider where you're living and whether you're going to be able to continue living in that place. Basically, whether your region has a future or not. And it's very important to think about what your vocation is, whether you can do something that will be useful to other people that will allow you, incidentally, to make a living.
Well, that's good advice. So people are we're gonna decentralize. People are going to be moving out into the country, I guess.
No, I don't think that it's going to be quite like that. In fact, no? I think that I think we will see demographic shifts, but that they will be rather surprising. There's an assumption by a lot of people I talk to that if the suburbs get into trouble, then therefore everybody will move to the city. But I don't think that it's going to work out that way. And I don't think everybody's going to move to the country necessarily either. I think that what will happen is the suburbs really are have very poor prospects. But so do our big American metroplex cities, virtually all of them. And they're quite different. I mean, San Francisco and New York and Boston are not the same as Dallas and Houston and Atlanta. But nonetheless, they've all achieved a size and a scale that is not really going to be consistent with the energy realities of the future. And I think that they're going to contract substantially. And in some of these places, the contraction is going to be more disorderly than in other places. But I think they're going to contract, and that even as that occurs, they will densify at their old centers and along their waterfronts. And the places that have waterfronts are going to be in a more favorable situation. I mean, this is apart from whatever happens with climate change. But I think that the action is actually going to be in the smaller towns and the smaller cities in America, the very places that have been deactivated and more or less depopulated in our time, in recent history. I think that they're going to become the places that have a much better chance of making it in the future as we confront these new energy realities. And what will in effect be necessarily a new scale of organized human life.
So we're not going to.
There's something I forgot. I left out something that's
Yeah.
very important. The places that are successful are going to be the places that have a meaningful relationship with agriculture, because we're going to have to grow more of our food close to home. We don't know how much, whether it's 10% or 80%, but we're going to have to do more of that. And the places where that's not possible are going to be places that are going to be very troubled.
Yeah, well, that's true, and I think you're going to see places like, I guess I would say, the cities you really don't want to be in my opinion, would be Albuquerque, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and I think maybe Southern California is not going to be a very good place.
Well, I would agree with you on all of those, and I think that they're going to be very unfortunate places. What's going to happen for a while in maybe in Southern California and in Phoenix and Tucson is, there will be sort of a fight between Anglos and Hispanics over who will occupy the terrain. And eventually we'll make the discovery that it will not support any substantial population of any ethnic group.
That's right. and never has, actually.
No, this has been an unusual period where, because we had a lot of cheap energy, we were just able to pump a lot of food and water into these places. And, and when you fly over Arizona, you see all these irrigated circular farms, with those great revolving irrigation machines. And, it takes a lot of energy to do that, and it's expensive, and we're not going to be able to continue doing that. So those places are going to be in trouble. I'm a little more optimistic about places like the upper Midwest. I think the Great Lakes are a wonderful resource that has, obviously fallen in, has been deactivated and fallen into disuse. You go to these little shipping towns in northern Michigan and Wisconsin, Minnesota. There's really there's very little there anymore. They look like a kind of a former Soviet backwater up there. But it's a great inland sea, very close to some of the best agricultural land in North America, and I think that it will become reactivated.
Yeah, I would think Canada is going to probably do pretty well in the next few years, too.
Well, it may, and they may actually even benefit from whatever climate change developments occur.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, growing food is going to become very important. And we just seem to have colliding realities going on, where we have, on the one side, this obvious to me, a decentralization going back to local culture and food, and maybe we'll be connected by the internet. I don't know. There'll be enough energy for that. But then at the same time, then we have this really, and it's not just Obama, it was Bush too, and it's been going on for a long time, this kind of attempt to keep trying to centralize authority in the federal government and getting us involved in all these incredibly insane wars, which are draining the economy.
Well, I got to stop you for a minute, because it's not as though power wasn't already concentrated in the federal government before George Bush came along.
Well, that's true.
It
just seems to be growing exponentially.
An increasing concentration of power and over the decades, and really, really accelerating in the mid 20th century, and that was the high tide of the American industrial fossil fuel experience. By the time we were in the 60s and 70s and 80s, that was it. That was the peak for us. And it's not surprising that that's the point where the central government was the most potent and the most powerful. But it's been increasingly less so.
Well, you definitely are an optimist, and that's good. Want to hear more about anything else that you've got coming down the line?
Well, I just finished a book this past week. I wrote a novel called World Made by Hand. It was published last year. And it was a novel set in the post-oil future in upstate New York. And,
okay, we want to hear about that. We're going to come right back. This is Smoke and Mirrors. I'm Jay Weidner, and we'll be right back.